So in this segment, we're going to be talking about UK car industry collapsing as Jaguar Land Rover looks to move elsewhere for batteries, and that's for electric vehicle batteries, which are very different to the kind of ones you have in usual petrol or diesel cars. It's quite interesting actually change in the industry, which makes actually a lot of sense. But we're seeing it more recently. The changes happening in real time. So, almost a decade after playing home to Europe's first mass produced electric car, the UK is at risk of becoming a footnote in the global auto industry shift to battery powered vehicles. This is actually a really, really good article, and the author, Mr. Sindra Philip, deserves a lot of credit. The UK lacks the cell and pack factories automakers will need to support their transition away from internal combustion engines and in towards electric cars, for example. So without the batteries, without the necessarily the materials to make the batteries or to have someone manufacture them, what that means is car manufacturers saying, look, what the current situation is, if we manufacture the cars in the UK, we're going to have to import the batteries from somewhere else, be that the EU or another third country, which obviously is problematic. It's very expensive and it slows down supply a lot, especially given that we are no longer EU members. So even if the batteries were, say, manufactured in, say, France, for example, it could get to the UK very quickly. But now, if they wanted to follow that model, it simply wouldn't work, because they'll get bogged down at the border. The country's top auto manufacturer, Jaguar Land Rover, is in talks with Northvolt AB and SVolt Energy Company Technology Co. about supplying batteries for a range of EVs it may assemble in Slovakia, according to people familiar with the matter. Now, Slovakia, strangely enough, has become a really big, I think, car manufacturing superpower in Europe. This is unless battery investment picks up. So I think what Jaguar Land Rover are trying to say to the British government is, unless somehow the certain companies start manufacturing more batteries in the UK, we're going to have to move, because at the end of the day, right, if we have to import these batteries from Slovakia is very far away from the UK. It's on the other side of Europe, and that comes with a significant cost of transporting the batteries, and then you still have problems at the border. So it makes sense to move to Slovakia, make all of the car over there, really, and then try and export that car, because you have the entirety of the EU market. You still have Great Britain, and you'd have other countries kind of towards Asia as well. So it actually makes a lot of sense, right, to move to a country like Slovakia. Labour costs are, I think, cheaper over there, and you have a lot of people who are experts in building cars, because the car manufacturing industry has been moving in that direction, Slovakia. So car makers may only accelerate their exodus from what was the world's second biggest auto manufacturing base. It's crazy that the UK was actually that far up in car manufacturing. When you think of car manufacturing, I thought it would have mostly died kind of after the 70s with the collapse of certain British car manufacturers. Also that combined with kind of a consolidation of car manufacturers as well into kind of central slash Western Europe outside of the UK. It's very interesting actually. The UK was still really high up there just 10 years ago. In the last few years, the UK fell outside the top 15, and there's a graph here they've got. It's actually quite cool. We'll see that in a minute. Really weird I said a graph. That's quite cool. Must be getting old. It's about to be too late to preserve the UK role as a major automotive producer, said Andy Palmer, the former CEO of Aston Martin, unless there's either a carrot or stick incentive, more socialism, to incentivize battery production in the UK, because battery production, there's a lot of upfront costs to that. There's a lot of upfront costs, amongst other things, setting up a factory, etc., finding customers for the batteries. You want to be in a centralized location where you have different car manufacturers nearby. It's only a matter of time before the automobile industry here becomes a niche industry that caters to brands such as Rolls-Royce and Bentley. And even then, what does really keep them here? You look at the graphs, you can see here, I think this is month-on-month production, I'm assuming, 1.8, 1.7 million cars, and you can see a massive drop-off. So this will be towards the start of the pandemic. You can see there's a massive drop-off, kind of post-Brexit. It peaks around 2017. You can see just a consistent drop-off. And obviously you can argue, well, is it to do with Brexit when Brexit was back in 2016? That's a fair argument to make. But you can see a consistent kind of drop-off. And then you've got the start of the pandemic when there was a massive chip shortage in Asia, and so a lot of these newer cars, they have CPUs and things manufactured by different companies. I think ARM are one of the biggest ones, and so because of the chip shortage, they were unable to manufacture the car. So you can see a drop off. And then you're coming towards Brexit, you can see a slight rise, kind of once the import checks start kicking in from the EU side. You can see more of a drop off, and here you're in the hundreds of thousands, which is not great. And it's the amount of drop off since 2017 is just crazy. And so, what that kind of shows you is that the pandemic has obviously had an impact, but I reckon you'll see car manufacturing rebound in Europe once the chip shortage is alleviated. But in the UK, it simply won't happen, as the move to electric vehicles redraws manufacturing maps, because at the end of the day, these car manufacturers, they're not going to manufacture the batteries themselves by the looks of it. They're going to rely on third-party suppliers. And if those third-party suppliers are far away, it doesn't make the business viable. The UK is endangered by a scarce supply of raw materials, which again we have to import all of those. Lithium, even in Europe, lithium's not a resource that we have here. Expensive energy, which again is a huge problem, which makes a country like France far more enticing, because during kind of energy related shocks, for example, France has a lot of control because they generate a lot of electricity. Obviously, they're not moving to France; they're moving to Slovakia. Which I don't know how high the energy is, but I don't think it's anywhere near as high as the UK. Meagre government incentives, so that's more socialism. That's the government setting up essentially grants for these battery manufacturers to set up shop here, and potential related Brexit tariffs. Which again, the threat of the trade war looming is businesses hate uncertainty. If the TCA is scrapped, any of these cars manufactured in the UK would face tariffs. I think it's between 10 to 20%. I'm not 100% sure. 20% on top of a car that's going to cost you 10 grand is a lot of money. Not to mention the fact that if the UK starts doing tariffs on imports as well, which we're probably not going to see, but if we do see that, you're going to see the cost dramatically increase of raw materials, which isn't viable. What would you rather do? Face imports on all of the parts you're importing from Europe, or just build the entire thing in the EU and only face tariffs once or twice, for example? While the country has pumped hundreds of millions of pounds into battery technology research, this has spurred minimal production. Again, having the research is great because you can sell that research to companies that are, willing to innovate, for example. You can sell that technology to manufacturers, or you can work with manufacturing hubs, car manufacturers, to build the technology similar to AMD's kind of relationship with TSMC. You can use them to manufacture the goods you want to manufacture. Obviously, there's a lot of trust involved there, but if we're not manufacturing this stuff ourselves, we're losing out on a lot of money, because I think that's where a lot of the money is in the the manufacturing and sale of it. To date, the UK is just one major plant in operation, owned by China's Envision Group. And again, what's keeping them here? They're a Chinese-owned firm. If another country, for example, offers them enough money, they'll probably move. And no doubt, if this, Envision Group doesn't have enough customers to buy the batteries, as car manufacturers are dying in this country, they're going to move. The manufacturer added production of long-range packs for Nissan's Leaf EVs last year and announced plans to expand, though not until 2024 at the earliest. And here's a question for the audience, right? It was Nissan in Sunderland. I think they stayed because of high government subsidies, right? What if China's Envision Group decides to leave because they got offers from another country, say Slovakia, for example, right? They offered this Envision Group a lot of money to move over to Slovakia to manufacture batteries over there. What would keep Nissan in the UK if it wasn't for higher subsidies, even higher subsidies than we offered them? Because they would have to import those batteries from an EU country, for example. What would keep Nissan here at that point? How much could they demand off the British government? A spokesperson for Jaguar Land Rover, which produced more than 220,000 vehicles in the UK last year, said the manufacturer continues to explore all options for EV battery supply, and that no decisions have been made yet. And so if they don't find a supply in the UK, they're going to look at moving production. That's what it looks like anyways. Electric vehicles pose a chicken and egg dilemma. Car manufacturers are reluctant to build new factories or retool existing ones to make electric vehicles without a battery facility on site or nearby, because that makes a lot of sense when you think about it. The closer the company or the factory that makes the batteries is, the easier you can do just-in-time management. I think that's one of the things the Japanese helped to create the idea of just-in-time supply and management. Battery manufacturers, in turn, are generally unwilling to invest billions of dollars to set up a plant without reliable customers within short range. And that's why I think you're seeing Slovakia become a manufacturing powerhouse in Europe, because both of these kind of the battery manufacturer and the car manufacturer will be quite close to each other. And that's where you create that kind of dynamic of, well, we can set up shop here because there's a battery manufacturer, a few miles down the road, for example. British Volt is, of course it is among a handful of the startups. No doubt they'll get us a lot of government money, and that have announced plans to build a giant battery plant in the UK. But firm orders and manufacturing commitments are lacking, because if they're going to move, they're not going to order from this British Volt company. They're going to order batteries from some company in the EU. That could be a persistent obstacle, given the industry is mostly home to lower volume luxury and car brands such as McLaren, Bentley, Aston Martin, and Lotus. So these are the brands that manufacture in the UK, and they produce cars at a lower volume in terms of manufacturing. So they might manufacture less cars, but they sell it at a higher ticket. So that's how they make their money. But obviously, if they're not manufacturing a ton of cars, they're not going to buy a lot of batteries, which puts British Volt in a dilemma where, say, if they could manufacture, say, 10,000 batteries a month, if they're only selling 5,000, it causes problems, because these companies here might not buy as much because they don't have to. It's not their business model. While Nissan Motor Co, Stellantis NV, and Volkswagen AG, owned Bentley, have committed to making EVs in the UK, analysts have warned that much more investment is needed to protect the industry's position. To preserve the current size of the car sector, the UK needs to increase battery capacity 45-fold to more than 90 gigawatt hours. So it's not just producing the batteries, it's producing the ones that companies actually want, which is 90 gigawatt hour ones. The Green Finance Institution Coalition for the Decarbonisation of Road Transport, they need a better name, honestly, said in a report this month, if the battery sector does not emerge in the UK, there is both the lost opportunity cost of financial gains of batteries being captured elsewhere. So I think what they're saying here is that if we don't get a battery manufacturing hub in the UK, the financial gains of it, we're not going to benefit, which makes sense. But we also wouldn't benefit from car manufacturers setting up shop here, purely because they're not going to, because one needs the other. And in turn, a risk that the existing automotive industry in the UK could diminish, moving to co-locate with battery production. It's basically what I've been saying earlier, to be honest, which is that, once they face issues, or if the future they're thinking of expanding their existing companies, they might say, well, look, we can set up shop in, say, Sunderland, for example, but the company that manufactures batteries only produce 5,000 when we need 15,000. So where else could we set up shop? Because setting up a factory or retooling a factory is a lot of money. If you watch some of Gamers Nexus's videos on when they went to Taiwan, they talked about the cost of tooling. It was in the millions just for certain tools. British Volt has broken ground on the UK's first gigawatt giant battery factory in Northern England, which aims to produce 30 gigawatt hours from the end of 2027, enough cells for around 300,000 EV battery packs a year. But the issue is that the industry are looking at 90 gigawatt hours from what we read earlier, so even then British Volt might not even be supplying the right kinds of batteries. It secured preliminary partnerships with Aston Martin and has slated its first electric model for 2025, as well as Lotus. So this is good news for the UK. The window to attract battery makers is narrowing, with European governments lining up big support packages that have made them more attractive. And if you're getting a lot of investment from the jump, say, for example, I said to the French government, look, I want to set up a factory in your say Marseille, right? And the French government say, look, we'll offer you, factory costs 10 million to make, we'll offer you 500k for it. That's a great investment from the jump. If the UK are offering you 100k or offering you nothing, which country are you going to go for? France or the UK in that sense? You're most likely going to go to France. EU countries have collectively pledged more than 6 billion euros in public spending to build up the industry, and investment, they say, will unlock another 14 billion euros in private funds. Now, I'm not really the biggest fan of, more socialism in this sense of, giving companies incentives to set up shop, but at the end of the day, this is the game here, and companies are looking at incentives to see where to set up shop, because they do create a lot of jobs and a lot of other things that come off, manufacturing cars, showrooms and amongst other things, garages as well. Engineers are needed. Some of these showrooms have engineers on site so they can deal with the cars' issues. For example, they can create a lot of jobs with these car manufacturing places. So when you set up subsidies in that sense, I'm not necessarily against it, as long as these companies pay tax, etc. But, given the fact that EU countries are offering far better subsidies, why would you set up shop in the UK? There's a lot of reasons to not set up shop in the UK, and companies are very smart. They're going to be looking at that. This month, VW said it was pushing ahead with its plans for a 10 billion euro EV factory and vehicle production hub in Spain. This followed Stellantis and Mercedes Benz Group AG setting up shop in Italy, on top of the ones they already had planned for Germany and France. So you can see they're setting shop across Europe, and the UK is not one of them. The trade deal set up between the UK and the European Union in the wake of further Brexit, in the face of Brexit, complicates matters. While initially a relief to car makers because they didn't want a no-deal Brexit, by 2027, half of the parts content going into EVs and hybrids will need to be sourced locally, so either in the UK or the EU, to qualify for the tariff-free aspects of the trade deal. Jaguar Land Rover, which announced plans for Jaguar to ditch combustion engines in 2025, hasn't yet decided its production plans. The company has a contract manufacturing arrangement in Austria. So again, it depends on how much of the car is actually manufactured in the EU. That's another problem they could face. If, for example, there isn't enough to get the tariff-free access, even if they manufacture the car in the EU, they can still export from, say, Slovakia to France with no problems. But if it came to not having that percentage of the car made in the EU or the UK, and that car is manufactured in Great Britain, for example, or should I say the United Kingdom, then you're going to face problems exporting from, say, Britain to France or Britain to the Netherlands. But if the majority of the car isn't made in the EU, but you export it from one EU nation to another, you're fine. It's unfortunately it is not a level playing field. Unfortunately, said Mike Hawkes, which sounds like a fake name, chief executive of the Society of Motor Manufacturing and Traders. The governments intervene in Europe, they intervene in America, they intervene in Asia. So the UK government has got to make sure, at the very least, it creates a framework for manufacturing to be more competitive. What he's saying is, other countries give subsidies, the UK government doesn't do enough and has to do more. With a looming trade war, if I were any of these companies, I would not set up shop in the UK. Unless they offered you some fat subsidies and covered any of the Brexit fallout, which I think, and I'm not 100% sure, they must have offered Nissan something similar to that. They must have offered Nissan a lot of money to stay in Sunderland, for example. But anyways, it's been a bit of a messy article, video, apologies for that. But what you can see from this is that UK car manufacturing is dying. UK car manufacturing is dying. You can see that from the graph, and it's not looking good for us. These car manufacturers are setting hubs in the rest of Europe and not in the UK. Northern Ireland could be a good avenue for them if they wanted to go for that. But again, the uncertainty around the protocol does not help them. It doesn't help them at all, and that's a key problem. Where if there was more certainty in Northern Ireland would be an option for these manufacturing hubs. But anyways, look, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.